The water that Glass had just drunk spurted out of his throat, causing him to choke and almost lose his life. To help the wound heal, he pulled out a handful of hay and poured out some gunpowder. He smeared some gunpowder on the wound in his throat and sprinkled the rest of the gunpowder on the hay. Glass lit the hay and used it to light a small torch. Then he turned his face to the sky and clenched his teeth. The pain was so intense that he fainted on the spot. The crows were waiting in the trees and secretly rejoiced at the sight. But what they did not expect was that Glass was resilient enough to wake up to replenish his energy. He ate dead birds and chewed on dry bark. However, before he could regain his strength, his pursuers approached to avoid being detected. He retreated to the cold river, leaning against the cliff to hide. When he was discovered, he immediately dove into the water. He had just escaped the enemy's bullets when a large wave swept him into a whirlpool in the rushing water. He was swept away and fell from a height many times. Fortunately, he caught a piece of driftwood that had been drifting in the river for who knows how long. He finally drifted to shore. The water temperature was so low that his whole body was numb. Recalling his strong will, he was able to light a fire and dry his clothes before he froze to death. Then he continued on his way back to camp. When he was hungry, he went to the riverbank and used a primitive method to catch some small fish. He ate them raw. However, this little bit of energy was not enough for him to recover. That day, he suddenly heard the sound of animals running. As he struggled to climb to the top of the mountain, he discovered a large herd of bison running around. It turned out that a pack of wolves was attacking them. Not long after, a bison was separated from the herd and killed. Glass knew that he was not strong enough to compete with the wolf pack for food, so he lay down to sleep. He hoped that the wolves would come back to give him some. When he woke up, he saw an Indian who had not only shot the wolves with a crossbow, but also lit a fire and was enjoying a buffalo feast alone. Glass slowly leaned on his stick and approached. But unexpectedly, the other party had already raised his bow and arrow as soon as he saw him. He was about to shoot immediately. So Glass knelt and raised his hands to the sky to show his surrender. But he couldn't speak loudly. He could only use gestures to ask for food, seeing that he was weak and didn't seem to want to attack. The other party also lowered his bow and arrow, no longer on guard. Then, the Indian threw him a large piece of beef. Glass quickly picked it up and took a big bite of the rotten meat. It almost made him vomit. But to survive, no matter how hard it was to swallow, he still tried to eat it all. Then, fell asleep again. The next morning, the Indian woke up first. He used a stick to poke a hole in Glass's shirt. Only then did he see the horrible wounds on his back. The Indians were curious to know what he had been through. Glass told him about his recent painful experiences. That day, Glass was busy killing a dead wild horse. Suddenly, he heard a loud noise in the distance. When he and his son rushed back to camp, they found that many of their comrades were dead and wounded. Some had arrows shot into their throats and some were stripped naked. Clothes and heads, some were stabbed to death with knives, some were drowned, although Glass had a musket in his hand, but was still knocked to the ground by a man just as he thought he was about to be beheaded. A stream of hot blood splashed into the face of the enemy in front of him. Fell and Glass was lucky to escape, but more and more men on horseback arrived. Glass's hunting party was quickly wiped out. Almost all of them, only 12, were lucky enough to escape on a small boat carrying some beaver skins, exchanged with life after the fierce battle. Smoke and fire filled the forest in the sky. Crows flew. Pigs died, covering the entire forest. People searched for belongings on the corpses of the hunters, and the chief was looking for his daughter, but could not find her. He ordered his men to take all the animals away with the aim of exchanging them for horses from the French hunters, and then riding to continue searching for his missing daughter. On the other side, the survivors of the hunting party began to discuss how to avoid the pursuit of Glass as suggested by the guide. First, hide the animals in the forest. Then leave the boat and walk over the mountains to the headquarters, because those who are very familiar with the terrain will definitely ambush downstream. But David and the party did not agree, because if they just walked, it would take a few more weeks. Hiding the animals in the forest was also not safe. If they lost these animals, this trip would be in vain. Those who sacrificed would also die in vain. However, the captain still insisted on following his advice of Glass because no one knew the terrain here better than him. David felt indignant. He began to imply that Glass was colluding with the Ree. It was said that when he lived with the pony, he killed a white officer to save his half-breed son. Fortunately, no one was provoked by David because everyone knew that the Ree and the pony were sworn enemies. However, David still refused to give up. Not only did he constantly mock Cock as a fool, but he also insulted Hack's deceased mother. Hack, the young man, could not stand it anymore and was about to argue back when Glass stopped him, because he did not want the conflict to continue to escalate. Otherwise, he would take advantage of his son, a half-breed. At this time, the captain also stood up to stop David too much. So the fierce argument ended. Although the captain ordered the use of the boat was forbidden, the two still did not listen and sailed the boat to safety. As a result, they were tragically killed the next day. The others, under Glass's command, passed through safely. After a night of hunting the next day, when everyone was still resting, Glass went into the woods alone to hunt. Suddenly, he was attacked by a huge brown bear. The brown bear continuously bit Glass, causing him to fall to the ground and scratch frantically. Its sharp claws immediately tore his back open. In front of the huge brown bear, Glass had no strength to resist. He could only lie still and pretend to be dead. Even as the brown bear used its claws to press his head down, he could only grit his teeth to endure the pain, not daring to make a sound. Fortunately, at this moment, a bear cub called from afar. The brown bear only left Glass behind to run off to check the situation. Glass took the opportunity to pick up the musket on the ground, then pulled the trigger and shot at the returning brown bear. However, not only did he miss the brown bear's weak point, but it also caused it to bite even more frantically this time. Glass was not only bitten in the throat, but also had no intact skin left on his body. At the moment when his life was hanging by a thread, Glass gritted his teeth to endure the pain, pulled out his dagger, and took the opportunity to stab the brown bear in the neck. The bear stabbed and Glass rolled down the mountain together. Glass was already seriously injured and now pinned down by the bear, unable to move. It was unknown how long it took his teammates to find him. They found the brown bear dead and Glass covered in injuries. Everyone was amazed at Glass's strength and courage. They did not expect him to be able to escape the clutches of an adult bear. But David teased him not to shoot like that. It might attract the people here. Fortunately, the captain did not abandon Glass because of the potential danger. He meticulously used needles and thread to sew up the wounds all over his body. In the evening, the hunting team gathered around the fire to warm up. Jim carefully dug out a string of bear claws and stuffed it into Glass's backpack because bear claws symbolize moving forward, helping people bravely face difficulties, and also symbolize peace and health. Jim also hoped that Glass could get to the other side. The people stole cattle and found a French hunter to trade. They wanted to trade guns and horses, but the French hunter refused to trade horses. They even complained that the animals had obvious American hunting marks on them, so the price of food had to be halved. Hearing the word thief, the chief immediately became furious. It was obvious that you had robbed us of our land and livestock. Even my daughter had been robbed by you white men. The reason I agreed to trade with you was only to preserve our reputation. In fact, at this time, the chief did not yet know that it was these Frenchmen who had robbed him of his daughter. Even the war between the and the hunting party this time was caused by the French hunters. They robbed the chief's daughter and blamed the hunting party while they sat back and enjoyed the golden bowls. They bought the livestock that the had stolen at a cheap price. However, on territory, they did not dare to be too arrogant. In the end, they had to agree to exchange horses and guns. The next day, the hunting party continued on their journey under the captain's orders. Everyone took turns carrying Glass. They crossed the jungle and waded through streams. But the weather was getting colder. It even started to snow after a difficult climb up the mountain. Glass suddenly had a high fever. Seeing this, David immediately uttered harsh words. Cruel. If this continues, not only will we not be able to help him, we will also die. This time, the captain heard it and did not object because what David said was indeed true. So after thinking for a long time, he decided to personally finish Glass off. But when he pointed the gun at Glass, he hesitated and could not bring himself to deal the final blow. After considering all the factors, he decided to pay $100 each for 2 people to stay and take care of Glass until he died naturally. The rest would go to the original safe area first. Hack and Jim's son volunteered to stay without compensation. Then, David saw that there was money and quickly joined in, declaring that he would definitely stay with Glass until the end and would give him a decent funeral. However, other than digging a hole to bury Glass, he pretty much just sat there waiting for Glass to die. The night wind howled and encouraged his father to survive. His mother had said that a tree with deep roots was prone to rot, so strong winds would never knock it down. Thanks to his son's constant encouragement, Glass made it through the night. But David grew impatient as he feared that the person would suddenly chase him. The reason he was so afraid of the person was because they had once cut off half of his scalp. The sound of the razor on his skull still made him angry when he thought about it. It became a nightmare that haunted him for the rest of his life, so he really hoped Glass would die soon so he could go in peace that day when Jim and Hack both went out to find food. David began to persuade Glass. Why are you enduring it like this? Not only can you not save yourself, you can also kill us. Just blink. I can help you escape quickly. After speaking, he kept looking into Glass's eyes. He couldn't help but say that David was really cunning. Who could keep their eyes wide open without blinking? Just when Glass couldn't bear it anymore, he blinked and David immediately used a rope to strangle him. Then he tightly covered Glass's nose and mouth, trying to suffocate him to death. Fortunately, Ha ran over in time and used the butt of his gun to knock David down. He loudly called Jim to come back for help. But at this time, Jim was scooping water from the river. The sound of the flowing water completely drowned out Hack's calls. David was afraid that Hack's scream would attract everyone, so he pulled out a knife and stabbed him to death. Then he covered his face. All of this fell into Glass's eyes. He lay on the ground, but his whole body was injured. He couldn't do anything. He could only watch silently, feeling a little resentful in his heart. When Jim returned to the water, everything was quiet again as if nothing had happened. What happened at night, Jim wondered where Ha had gone. He searched around, but couldn't find any trace. Glass really wanted to tell the truth, but his throat was bitten so he couldn't make a sound. The next morning, David suddenly woke up Jim, who was sleeping, and lied to him that there were dozens of people who had come to the riverbank. If they wanted to survive, they had to leave immediately, but Jim didn't want to abandon the weak Glass and didn't want to break his promise to take care of him until death. David didn't want to talk nonsense with him anymore, but directly dragged Glass, who was lying on the ground, and threw him into the hole he had dug. He just superficially scooped some dirt, then left, telling Jim to shoot Glass. Once then left, he said he would turn around and leave without looking back. Jim was alone and very scared of everyone. To save his life, he had to leave Glass behind, so after leaving a bottle of water with his picture engraved on it, he chased after David. Who knows how long later? Glass finally had enough strength. He gritted his teeth, enduring the intense pain, crawled out of the hole. Then he crawled like a worm beside the boy. The boy lay silently on the cold chest. Glass was originally an American, then captured by the Pony tribe of Indians. But thanks to luck and extraordinary strength, he stood out in the tribe. The chief fell in love with him and married his only daughter to him. The couple had a son. But one day, the tribe was suddenly massacred by the colonial army. On the same day, his wife was brutally murdered to protect her son. Glass was forced to kill a white man. From then on, his son became his only hope and the last memory his wife left. But now, his son has also become a cold corpse. His mental world has completely collapsed. However, deep in his heart, a strong voice rang out, telling him that he must find a way to survive, because only by surviving would he have a chance to take revenge. With a strong desire to live, Glass began to slowly move alone to a safe area. On the way, when he was hungry, he gnawed on animal bone marrow. When he was thirsty, he recklessly drank water. But before he could recover his strength, he encountered a man chasing him. In order to save his life, he jumped into the cold river and met the Indian who sympathized with his tragic situation. It turned out that he was a pony and his family had been killed by Sioux. Although both were Indians, the two tribes were not united. Now he was preparing to go south to find others of the same tribe and agreed to let Glass go with him after many days of contact. The two gradually became close, although in the cold wilderness. They were like two innocent children resting. They stuck out their tongues to let the snowflakes fall to enjoy the purest joy of humanity. However, in a larger blizzard, Glass's wound began to rot. If he was not treated in time, he would surely die to save him. The pony man had a hard time cutting down a tree branch and setting up a temporary tent. Then he pulled Glass inside using folk remedies to cure him. Then he lit a fire and roasted hot stones and placed them next to Glass to warm him. Glass fell asleep dreamily. In his dream, he came to an abandoned church. His son Hack walked towards him. Father and son met again after a long time, hugged each other. However, Glass did not feel warm. When he opened his eyes, he found himself hugging a tree. The bells were still ringing in his ears, but this ruined church was not the warm paradise he had always wished for, although he had accepted the invitation of the god of death. But now he could not see his wife and children again because he had to take revenge and swing the scythe of the god of death. Just like that, Glass once again overcoming. This time the snowstorm had stopped, the sunlight flooded the ground, but when he stepped out of his hiding place to the forest ahead, he discovered the horseman had been hanged on a tree. On his chest hung a wooden board with the words, "We are all barbarians, and the main culprits are the hateful French who traded with the people over there." They were drinking and celebrating for killing a foreigner. Glass discovered that, but did not leave. But after observing carefully, he quietly hid behind a large tree until night. He approached and intended to steal a French horse. But at this moment, a Frenchman suddenly pulled out a woman to light a match, and this woman was his daughter by the chief Levi. Because he was too close, if he wanted to steal the horse, Glass had to deal with this Frenchman first, so he quietly sneaked up behind him and used a gun to control him. The woman took the opportunity to pull out a knife and put it to his neck. Glass took the opportunity to ride away, but in his haste he dropped the water jug. The woman also took advantage of the chaos to escape in another direction. At the same time, Jim and David returned to camp. Facing the captain's question, David calmly boasted about how he had devotedly taken care of Glass until he died. The captain also gave him a worthy reward, but Jim was too guilty, so he did not accept the money. After escaping the pursuit of the French, Glass was safe through the night, but as soon as he woke up, he was attacked by the people. Luckily, he was very alert and did not fall into the people's encirclement, but unfortunately the horse's butt was hit by an arrow, causing him and the horse to fall into the abyss. Luckily, as he fell, there were trees to cushion him, so he didn't hit the ground and die instantly like the horse. However, at this time, a blizzard hit and the temperature dropped sharply. To avoid freezing to death, Glass removed all the horse's internal organs, took off all his clothes, and crawled into the horse's belly. The next day the snow melted, the sky was clear. Glass once again overcame the crucial moment. After saying goodbye to the horse that saved his life, he continued on his way to protect the majestic and vast snowy mountains. The surrounding was cold and quiet, with no one except for Glass's small figure walking non-stop. Every night he warmed himself in the ravine and up the cliffs. No one sentence, "David killed my son." He always reminded himself to take revenge. Revenge became the only belief that helped him survive, and as long as that belief was steadfast and strong enough, he could overcome all difficulties. On the other side, a French hunter suddenly came to the camp, declaring that only one person in his team was still alive. He wanted to ask the captain for some food, but the captain only agreed to exchange it for money. The hunter had no choice but to take out some of the few items on his person. When he saw the familiar water bottle, Jim was extremely surprised because this was the bottle he left for Glass. He thought he had taken the bottle and accidentally dropped it on the way back to camp. After asking for the location of the lost vase, the captain immediately ordered someone to prepare horses and food and offered a reward of $10 per person to send someone to find the whereabouts of the vase. As a result, although they did not find the vase, but found Glass dying, this surprised the captain and Jim because they did not expect Glass to still be alive. Stubborn, this meant that David had lied and was tricked. The captain rushed back to camp to prepare to deal with David, but David had not only escaped long ago, but also took all the captain's money. The captain was angry with Jim, even accused him of treason, and intended to lock him in a cage to await execution. Fortunately, in the conversation with the captain, Glass told the truth that Jim was also tricked, and the one who deserved to die was not Jim, but David. He then asked the captain to give him a gun and a horse. He wanted to go protect David himself. The captain intended to let Glass rest to get healthy, find someone he could do that, but Glass said that without me he couldn't find him because now David is like a frightened deer who only knows cowardice, hiding in the deep forest. But he still regrets still not daring to give up everything. Glass has died once and no longer worries. When seeing Glass's determination, in the end the captain decided to go with him. They quickly followed David's trail to quickly find him. Then Glass decided to part ways with the captain. He went into the forest to the west while the captain went to the east on the snow-covered area. Not long after, the captain met David. At this time David was hiding behind a rock, pointing his rifle at the captain while talking. The captain was about to pull out his pistol but was shot dead by David. Hearing the first gunshot, Glass rushed towards the noise but only saw the captain's body with his head peeled off. David did that to blame Ree because only Ree treated the enemy by peeling off his head, but Glass was not fooled by his trick, but knew it was clear that it was him. However, while riding a horse to drag the captain's body, Glass was suddenly ambushed by David from above and shot down. David then went down the mountain to check the body, but found that the person who was shot was the captain who had died earlier. It turned out that Glass had predicted that David would ambush him, so he cut a tree branch to support the captain's body and let him ride ahead while he hid behind the horse. When David reacted, Glass shot him first, but the shot missed his vital spot. David was wounded and ran away in panic, but no matter how he ran, Glass could still smell him. Finally, the two met in a forest. They started a gunfight, but neither injured the other. While running, David accidentally fell down the slope. Glass chased after him and rolled down after David. He was wounded and exhausted, seeing that there was no way out, so he had to reason with Glass. At first, We agreed that he would close his eyes. But I did. He also did not want to kill his son. He disobeyed. We both know my conscience is clear. Glass did not want to listen to his nonsense. He only knew that killing people costs life. So he immediately raised his axe and cut David. David was unprepared and had his finger cut off. He was furious and immediately pulled out his dagger and cut Glass's face. Then he stabbed him in the knee. During the struggle, he bit off Glass's ear. Glass was like an immortal warrior without a soul. Although he was covered in wounds, he still tried his best to snatch the dagger and stabbed it deep into David's chest. But when he was about to finish off this enemy, he found out that Ree was on the other side of the river at that time. He remembered the pony man's words. Vengeance is God's business, not ours. Now, Glass finally understood this. So he chose to let God punish sinners instead of becoming a savage who only knew revenge. Glass threw David into the river to let him float towards the Lie people. The chief did not disappoint Glass's expectations. After cutting off the remaining half of David's scalp, he used a slash to finish him off. Glass thought that he would also have a hard time escaping death like Ree. He did not chase and kill him, because the chief's daughter had returned. Forgiving him was also considered a way to repay his favor. However, when the immortal Glass completed his revenge and tried to conquer the path ahead, he could not climb a small slope because what gave him faith in life was not the will to survive, but the earnest call of his wife and children. Now that his wife and children were all dead and his revenge had been declared, he no longer had the strength to continue walking. The Revenant is an adventure film directed by Alexandro and starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hyde. The film was released in 2015. The film is adapted from the 19th century novel of the same name by Michael Punk. Because the upper class loves fashion, beaver became the most sought-after animal in the fur trade. So hunting teams appeared specializing in hunting beavers to make money. Glass was a member of this hunting team. But during one action, they were attacked by the people, not only losing a large part of the animal but also losing 2/3 of his teammates. Although this time Glass was lucky to survived, but then while hunting alone he was attacked by a giant brown bear, so he was seriously injured, becoming a burden to the group. So as not to delay the group's trip, the captain offered a reward of $100 for the person who stayed to take care of him until he died naturally. But David initially changed his mind halfway through. Not only did he leave Glass alone in the frozen wilderness, but also killed his only son with his own hands in revenge. Glass showed his strong will, not only overcoming illness and overcoming harsh nature, but also escaping the pursuit and desperate situation. In the end, after going through many inhumane tortures, he found David and killed the enemy. Although Glass was also a member of the Sand Beast team, but he was unlike most people who were willing to do anything for their own benefit. But in this fiercely competitive world, there is no place for civilization in the wilderness. Only the strong can survive. On the contrary, once your weakness is exposed, you will be torn apart and devoured. If David had not killed Glass's son, Glass would have been seriously injured and died in the cold wilderness. But his stubbornness always nourished him. He had wounded the lion. The power of killing is amazing. The power of belief is limitless. Whether that belief comes from hatred or love, it can make an ordinary person unlock great potential and create amazing miracles. In the uncertain journey of life, we inevitably encounter various challenges and difficulties. These difficulties seem insurmountable, making people afraid. But as long as we have a strong belief in our hearts, we will have enough courage and strength to overcome all difficulties. Because once a person has a steadfast belief, it is like having a lamp that never goes out, illuminating the path ahead, leading us forward. This belief is the pillar of the soul, the spiritual armor that helps us, when facing failures and difficulties, still hold our heads high and persevere forward. If you like this video, leave your opinion about the movie in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next interesting reviews. See you in the next videos.